Supposed to have all my power on, I'm not. Good to see you all here this morning. My name is David Schonhoff. I'm the minister here at Central. I've been here for a few years. I want to introduce you to our song leader who just got through directing us, Craig Allison, who's also our campus minister. For those that are visiting here for the first time, that are having students come in on campus, you'll be interested in getting to know who he is and what the Student Center is about. I've had the privilege and the opportunity to be with Craig now for several years and working in a good and close relationship with him. And Craig, if you would just take a few moments to introduce a few things this morning, and then I'll step up and begin the lesson.
First, I just wanted to introduce the leadership that I get to work with, that I'm privileged to work with. So when I call your name, if you would, I'm going to embarrass you. Yes, it's okay though. Just stand up so we can put a name to the face. Wanda Mance, first and foremost, is Wanda. There she is. She keeps us straight. She keeps us going. She is literally everything to every student. She's the cook, the house mom, the companion, the friend. Just keep standing as I call your name. Stephanie Adams. These are going to be the student directors. Stephanie Adams is a early childhood education major. Clark Akins. Clark has a double major of mechanical engineering and economics. Cody Harrington, sports management. Where's Cody? Cody's doing security. Okay. China Helton, exercise science. Chris Matherly, applied mathematics. Chris is going to be our representative out at Chat State this year. He answers to Malachi. That's his name. Caleb McDowd, he's an Asian history major. Macy Parton, early childhood education. Lily Sanchez, she is a communications major. Aaron Thomas, social work major. And Alex Van Sinis, criminal justice major. These are the folks that really keep the Student Center running and the activities going smoothly. And I could not do the job without these wonderful, loving Christian people.
Amen.
Y'all can be seated. Just wanted to jot a few things down. To give you an idea of exactly what we give the Christian Student Center. This is, by the way, not a complete list by any stretch. We do a fall, winter, and spring retreat. We have some type of monthly activity. We do Tuesday night dinner and devotionals. That's every week. We do lunches on Monday and Wednesdays. We do small groups on Thursdays. We do orientations, organizational fair, marketing and promotional events, open houses. We visit area congregations that help support the work that we do here at the Student Center. We host and prepare elder dinners. We conduct Bible studies. We lead campus events and initiatives regarding the CSC. And first and foremost, the students are just great Christian examples on the campus at the University of Tennessee here in Chattanooga. Our theme for this year, we have a theme every year, and this year our theme is going to be I Will Meet You There for the 2015-16 year. In a nutshell, this is examining our relational position to Christ. We're not called to sit within the confines of our collective buildings and homes. As Christians, we are called to leave the masses within our protective walls, to get out of our comfort zone and bear the reproach of the cross. We go to Christ. We pursue Christ. We go outside the camp. We meet him there. That's our theme for this year. I'm so excited. I know that the student directors and Wanda and the enormous support that we get here from the Central Church of Christ will stand behind us and motivate us and keep us doing what we need to be doing, and that's reaching out to this world and sharing the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. So thank you for your support. Thank you, student directors. Thank you, Wanda.
And thank you, Craig. The Student Center has been operating on campus, I think, for like 50 years or more. I'm really not sure about that part. Over 50 years. And again, it's a part of Central. For those that are parents here that don't know us, may be your first time here, we want you to know we take on this Student Center as our personal responsibility. They are our children. Craig has a stack of calling cards that he has here to hand out. I forgot mine this morning. Craig put his up here. He said, I'm not forgetting mine. But we want you to take one of these. Craig will be handing his out, and take the bulletins home with you of today's. There's a phone number on there of our office. And if you have an issue, can't get a hold of the child because they're sick, we will find them and we will make sure everything's okay. Anything else that comes along, please contact us. These are our family. We've done the same thing for a number of years and we feel that responsibility. We want you to know that. Now, just a fact here about Central, as Craig has talked about the Student Center. The Central congregation has been in this location for nearly 100 years, has been worshiping in the downtown area for over 100 years. And we feel an awesome responsibility to be a lighthouse in this community, not only to the UTC campus, but also to the entire world. Central is a very giving congregation, a very caring congregation. Besides having our fellowship meal right after service, and we want you all to stay for that, we feel a responsibility in a lot of different ways in this area. We have a giveaway that we have, which is basically like a downtown community outreach giving thing, kind of like a yard sale, where everything we can snatch up and gather up is given out to the community. Those are a couple of the things we do. We have a pantry that goes regularly once a week in this area to take care of some of the misfortune. We have mission works that go to a variety of different places. Involved in that are a lot of times some of our students. In addition to that, a lot of our adults. We have 4 elders in this congregation. I'm not going to ask them to all stand, but we feel very much the responsibility that God has given us to do the work that He's done in this congregation. Now, having said all that, open to Genesis chapter 1. I'd like to talk just for a couple minutes about identity. I was listening to Tom Brokaw, a very famous NBC nightly news anchor for numbers of years, talking some time ago. After having been well-known and famous in the United States, he went back to his hometown in Webster, South Dakota. And while he was there, he ran across someone about his age. He came up to him and said, "Say, aren't you Tom Brokaw?" And he said, "Well, yes, I am," thinking he recognized him. He says, "The one that went to high school here in Webster?" He said, "Yes, I am." He says, "I graduated with you." He goes, "Well, that's great." He goes, "By the way, whatever came of you?" Identity, you know, we think we've got it together, and then someone comes along and kind of spoils that. It's more than a DNA, more than a fingerprint. I was with some of the students as they were helping incoming freshmen on Thursday, inviting them in, moving things in from their cars and all, and of course the conversation breaks into, "Now what's your major?" And we kind of identify with that. And readily some of the freshmen say, "Well, I don't know, I've changed once or twice." And I remember Caleb, at least one of the students, said, "That's okay, I've changed 4 times." And that's Caleb. I think one more time while he was brushing his teeth this morning. You never know about Caleb. Caleb's a great guy. I love to tease him, so I can get away with that. But as we talk about identity, it's more than a major. It's more than an interesting topic. We're talking about who you are. Everything that surmises what you feel inside. And this is so important that we think about this because it sets our course for life. Identity can be described like this. When someone comes up and asks you, "Would you be willing to do this or so?" and say, "No, I'll never do that." See, that's part of your identity. It describes something about you, what you'll never do, what you always do, where you are and where you're at and how you behave. It's not just a fingerprint, you see, but it's something relational. Some people have a hard time. They're very distraught in life. They struggle with the idea of identity. I've had a few friends that have actually taken their lives. I think identity was something to deal with in there. But it's more than just feeling comfortable, but it's where we make our decisions in life. And the course that sets us into life and eternal life is based upon how we perceive ourselves, of who we are. If you catch yourself at a moment where you're really reflecting on this, a lot of times you look at yourself, you close your eye for a moment, you think, and you think back really in time of what you ought to be and what you want to be, and a lot of times you'll envision yourself almost like a child again. You're identifying with something of what you're still wanting to be. Many get it wrong, however. Their identity. They get confused about what's going on out there, and they make so many mistakes in it, and they get way down their path in life, and they look back and they wonder, how did I ever get here? Identity. Let's take a look at our real identity for just a moment. We'll start in the book of Genesis, if I ask you now to turn to chapter 1. And as God is revealing to us this creation that He's started, and how it all began with the words, "Let there be light." And He moves through and He creates light, and He creates earth, and He creates matter, and He creates animals. And then in verse 26, God says this, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." And so God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created him. Male and female, He created him. I want you to notice what's going on here, what's happening here, because God is producing or creating really all of these things out of nothing. And when it comes down to man, He puts something incredibly, immutably, undeniably, immortally different. He puts His image in us. We become a living soul. Now there's something inside us that's going to live forever. And it's not this body, this exterior, certainly not this hair that's already going away, but it's something that is going to live forever. This immortal part that God has put in us. Not everybody realizes or even wants to think in that direction. Famous physicist, atheist Stephen Hawking describes it like this: we're just a piece of dust in this cosmic universe. Oh, he so misses the point. Wants to really deny the point of God, and wants to not be identified with this God, because then it's going to clamp down on what He really would like to do. And so our world struggles. But our identity at the very beginning is formulated and built, created in the existence of God Himself. Coming along a little later in life, or in the world's existence, Solomon, the wise man, writes in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, an interesting verse. I'm sure you older ones and younger ones have probably heard it quoted and maybe read a few times. "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth." And then the passage goes on and talks about really what happens when you grow old. But the reminder is to do it while you're young. It's interesting, and I note this occasionally, the more often I'm watching individual words that God chooses to use and doesn't choose to use other things as He's defining things. God could have said, "Remember the Lord in the days of your youth." He could have said, "Remember God Almighty," and all of those things would have been accurate, but He chose the word Creator. Almost as if to take you back to the day that you were made, the day man was made, to remind us, as we're thinking about God, think about our connection. We are made or created in God's image. So incredibly so, that there ought to be something that we ought to look at within us and we identify with that tells me I'm different. Therefore, thinking about being made different, when I want to identify with who I am and what I ought to be and the decision I make and all of these things that go along with this, it makes me stop and think of all these people I'm relating to, because they are also made in God's image. Every one of us. And how I treat, how I want to encourage, or how I don't respond in the way I should, tells me something about how I'm looking at this identity. Because it ought to be that that spark or that image of God is in every individual. Whether he's sleeping out under some overpass, or he's wearing some three-piece suit in some high-rise apartment, maybe some expensive office, he's the same in God's sight. The image of God inside him. Now here's the difficulty. Satan comes along and he sees what's happening. He looks down on the earth and he sees that image of God and he doesn't like it a bit. And he wants to do all that he can to warp, to confuse, to distort this identity that God's given us. So that we don't reflect upon that, so we don't choose God, so we don't look at one another in the way we ought to and have that relational thing. We do something different. Let's look at Genesis chapter 3 and see what I'm talking about here. Now we find in verse 1 this person called the serpent. He's Satan there. He's more cunning, Scripture says, than all the other beasts of the field. And he comes along to Eve and he asks the question, has God indeed not given you every tree from the garden to eat from? Well, the woman says, yes, of course. Now, he's already planting a seed of doubt in Eve's mind. She goes on and talks about the things they're supposed to do and the one tree they're not supposed to eat. In verse 4, then the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. He's trying to change the woman's perspective of her identity. We mess up so much when we don't understand our relationship to God, and we start to seek after different ideas in mind. Satan does that. That's his goal, you see, in life. We come along and we say, well, I'm starting out as a freshman at UTC, and my major is. And Satan says, yeah, you just keep thinking in that direction. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about your identity with God Almighty and that Creator. Just go on and pursue what you want to do. I'll help you get there. And he does all that he can to all of us, in any way he can, to cause us to forget about who we really are and what we're about. Oh, he's swift. Matter of fact, he even tried to pull it on Jesus. That temptation that's described in the early chapters of the book of Matthew, chapter 4. Remember the description as Matthew's writing, and Jesus goes out in the wilderness and he's fasting 40 days and 40 nights. And then Satan comes along and he says this, if you're the Son of God, identity. Yeah, he's the Son of God. Well, if you're the Son of God, if you're really the Son of God, let's do this. Let's change these stones into bread. Jesus responds back, man doesn't live by bread alone. Satan, you know that. You know who you're tempting here. But nonetheless, he's after Jesus, questioning his identity, if you're really who you think you are. When we come into God's assembly, we're reminded of the Creator that made the heavens and the earth. We're reminded of what he's done for us. We're reminded of the fact that we're made in his image. And then in addition to that, as Christians, we have a special connection involved in this. We see we are now something different than just the rest of humanity. Look at Galatians chapter 3 for just a moment, as we see what's being described there. Galatians 3, verse 26, I want to look at here. Because now there's something rearranged by God. He says this through the penmanship of Paul, the Apostle Paul, as he's writing this letter. He says, for you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For as many of you as have been baptized into Christ, you have put on Christ. This is a new identity from the rest of the world now. Sons of God. We're made in the image of God, and now after sin has come into our life, we need a transformation, an identity makeover, and God does that through the blood of Jesus Christ if you commit to him through faith and are baptized. Now you're a son of God. It's amazing the courses, the decisions that we can make if we'd ever stop and consider along the way, each day, each setting, each moment, each path, each rock we cross them. that I'm made in the image of God. And that I am a son of God if I've chosen that path to follow Jesus. My decisions now are different than they used to be. It comes along a little bit different. Now, I decide this is not who I am. Over here, this is what I am. This is how I am. This is what I'll be. And when Satan comes along and tempts me, and oh yeah, I'm attracted toward that, but I remind myself I'm made in God's image. I'm a son of God, and now my choices have already been set. My pattern, my course is directed in another way. I don't live for myself. I don't live for the pressures of the world. I live for my God, who made me, and He bought me back through the blood of His Son. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, again, back to that passage, the latter part of that chapter, Solomon again talking about our identity with God, and he says, as we think about this God, the Creator that's been made us in His image, he says, fear God and keep His commandments. This is man's whole. There's something about our identity and what we are about that's built or connected to our relationship with God and how we trust, how we fear, how we respect, and how we honor Him. My path is directed in a different way because of the trust that I have in the God that created me. I look at the passages like Proverbs chapter 3, and I think differently than the world. When it says, trust in the Lord with all your might, and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. So I'm not choosing for myself now anymore. I'm letting God make the choices. So who are you? Besides being a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or a fifth-year senior, or a graduate, or a parent, or a grandparent. I'm not asking for fingerprints now. I'm asking you to look at yourself and ask yourself, who are you? What does God want to do with you? I challenge you at the close of the day, maybe when the sun is setting, or maybe when the stars are coming out, when it's just you and God, to look up in the sky and say, okay, God, I am made in your image. I did make the choice to be son of God. Now here I am, God. What do you really want to do with me? Set me in motion, and I'll trust you. I'll follow you, and I'll know that there's a purpose in my life. Because this is really what God has set forth. One of my favorite passages, among many preachers, have favorite passages everywhere in the Bible. But it's Jeremiah 29, verse 11, particularly in the New King, or the NIV. Jeremiah writes as he's thinking toward what God has planned for His Israel nation, and also for Christianity as a whole. And he says these words, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." So our identity based in God has a direction, and God has plans. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." But you don't get that when you choose identities with the world. They don't cross paths with God. They go in diametric different directions. When we choose God, we have a purpose of living for Him, a purpose of dressing different and living different and talking different and everything that's wrapped up. Are you living that way? Where the world, when they see you, says, "Now there goes a real man or woman of God." In the hidden parts of your life when only a few select people that know you well know you, how do they describe you? What words do they choose? Image of God, son or daughter of God. Tell me, who are you? And if you're not making good choices, and you know it's defining you as something different than what you ought to be, then rethink your career more than just your major or your life or your retirement or anything else, but rethink who you are. Your eternal destiny lies in the balance. If you're not living right with God, or if you have never made that choice, think about what is potentially there for you in what God will give you. And what God offered in sending His Son on the cross to make you His. Identity. Not according to the world, not being a speck of dust in the cosmic atmosphere, but connected to the Creator and the loving Father that sent His Son. We sing a song this morning, call it a song of encouragement or a song of invitation, but it's an opportunity to reconnect to God. If you've gone away, to establish your direction once again, to set a direction that says, I walk with you now, Jesus. I follow you. I live for you. I obey your commands. Choice is yours. God made it that way. Free will. Serving. And if you need to come forward, be baptized or to come back. Opportunity is yours while we stand and sing. Praise God.